Hi, this is Matt Baker. Today I'm going to show you the family tree of Italian monarchs, starting with the early medieval kings of Italy during the Carolingian period, proceeding through the Norman conquest of southern Italy during the High Middle Ages, and then finally ending up with the rise of the House of Savoy during modern times. I'll be using my brand new European Royal Family Tree West chart. Please note that this new chart is not simply a minor update made in order to include the new King of the UK, Charles III, although he is on there. It's actually a complete redesign made from scratch that I started before the Queen died. And one of the biggest changes is actually that the chart is now less Anglo-centric. France, Italy, and Germany are now in the middle, and their development out of Charlemagne's empire is made more clear. Great Britain and the Low Countries are now on the left, with Spain and Portugal on the right. You'll also notice that portraits are distributed more evenly and are more time period accurate. Finally, I attempted to fix what I felt was a major flaw on the previous version, and that was a lack of Italian representation. This new version includes many more Italian monarchs, particularly in southern Italy, where there were several independent kingdoms prior to the modern unification of the country. So, if you want to get a copy of this brand new chart, you can do so right now by visiting our website, usefulcharts.com. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476, Italy was first ruled by the barbarian king Odoacer, then by the Ostrogoths, and then by the Lombards. However, in 774, this man here, Charlemagne, conquered the kingdom of the Lombards and became the first Frankish king of Italy. Then, in the year 800, he was crowned emperor, the first person in Western Europe to be crowned as such since the fall of Rome. Ruling under him as King of Italy was his son Pepin, and then Pepin's illegitimate son Bernard. However, when Charlemagne died in 814, his empire was inherited by his only surviving son, Louis the Pious. Louis eventually had Bernard killed, and then he ended up giving the title of King of Italy to his eldest son Lothair instead. However, during the lifetime of Louis the Pious, the Frankish Empire was basically a single united state, with Italy just being one part of it. However, this all changed after Louis died in 840. At this point, his three surviving sons started to fight over how the empire would be divided. In 843, they came to an agreement known as the Treaty of Verdun, in which the empire was divided into three parts. Charles the Bald received West Francia, which would go on to evolve into France. Lothair received Middle Francia, which included Italy. And Louis received East Francia, which would go on to evolve into Germany. Lothair, being the oldest, also got to keep the title of emperor, but in reality, he was really only emperor in his own territory, with West and East Francia now being independent. Shown next to Lothair is the Iron Crown of Lombardy, which was originally the crown used by the earlier Lombard kings, but would go on to be used by the later Holy Roman Emperors as a symbol of their rule over Italy. But we're not to that point yet. Lothair was succeeded by his son Louis the Younger, but Louis died without a son, and therefore in 875, the crown of Italy, as well as the title of emperor, was seized by his uncle Charles the Bald. Then, after Charles died, the crown of Italy went from the western branch of the family to the eastern branch, with Louis the German's son Carloman becoming the next king of Italy. However, note that he did not claim the title of emperor. On this chart, anyone who held the title of emperor has a crown symbol above their name. Carloman did not have any legitimate sons, so after he died, the crown of Italy passed to his younger brother Charles the Fat, who was in fact crowned emperor, and who ended up inheriting Western Francia as well. Thus, for the first time since Louis the Pious, there was an emperor who once again ruled all three parts of the empire. However, yet again, this particular monarch didn't have any sons, and therefore, when he died in 887, the empire once again fell apart. West Francia returned to Charles the Bald's line, and East Francia went to Carloman's illegitimate son Arnulf. Italy, however, went to Berengar I, a female line member of the dynasty. But during his reign, there were 4 other men who claimed the title of King of Italy as well. Guy of Spoleto and his son Lambert, Arnulf, King of East Francia, and Louis the Blind, grandson of Louis the Younger. All 4 of these men also claimed the title of emperor, but in the end, Berengar either outlived or defeated all of them, and thus he himself was crowned emperor in 915. But in 924, Berengar was defeated by Rudolf II of Burgundy, who was then in turn defeated by Hugh, a great-grandson of Lothair. Hugh ruled Italy during a time known as the Pornocracy, a period we covered in depth in our video, Was There Really a Female Pope? I'll leave a link to that in the description. Hugh was nominally succeeded by his son Lothair, but power soon shifted back to Berengar I's line, with his grandson becoming Berengar II in 950. But here's where we get a big change when it comes to the landscape of Western Europe. While all this back and forthing was happening in Italy, a powerful king had risen up in Germany, known as Otto the Great. In 961, Otto conquered Italy and was crowned emperor. Thus, the Kingdom of Italy was joined with the Kingdom of Germany to form a new empire, which we usually refer to in English as the Holy Roman Empire. Sometimes the emperors from Charlemagne to Berengar are considered to be Holy Roman emperors as well. But according to most historians, the Holy Roman Empire really only started with Otto the Great. I should also point out that during the reign of Conrad II, the Holy Roman Empire came to include a third kingdom as well, the Kingdom of Burgundy. So basically, for the next 600 years or so, the King of Italy was whoever happened to be the Holy Roman Emperor, which was always someone who was also the King of Germany. However, I should make it clear that the Kingdom of Italy during this period was very much limited to northern Italy. Central Italy consisted of the Papal States, and in southern Italy, some land was still controlled by the Lombards, some by the Byzantines, and some by a Muslim emir. This changed during the 11th century, when most of the territory was conquered by the Normans. At the same time as the Norman ruler William the Conqueror was conquering England, another group of Normans was conquering southern Italy. Eventually, pretty much the entirety of southern Italy was united as the Kingdom of Sicily, with Roger II from the House of Hauteville becoming its first king. Roger was followed by his son William I, his grandson William II, his illegitimate grandson Tancred I, and then briefly by a great-grandson, before finally the kingdom was captured by his daughter Constance's husband, who happened to be the Holy Roman Emperor. Together, they had a son who became Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, as well as the King of Sicily. So, for a brief period, the Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of Sicily were held in personal union. This was during the reign of the Hohenstaufen dynasty, which was when the Holy Roman Empire was at its peak. Anyhow, Frederick II from the House of Hohenstaufen ended up marrying the reigning Queen of Jerusalem. So, therefore, their son Conrad inherited not only the thrones of Germany and Sicily, but also the throne of Jerusalem. He was never crowned emperor, though, and he died from malaria at age 26. This brought the reign of the Hohenstaufen emperors to an end, and there wouldn't actually be an emperor crowned for the next 62 years, a period known as the Great Interregnum. Sicily and Jerusalem, however, did pass to his 2-year-old son Conradin, but before long, Sicily was usurped by his uncle Manfred, who was an illegitimate son of Frederick II. But Manfred was extremely unpopular with the papacy, and therefore eventually the Pope invited this guy to invade Sicily. Charles was the younger brother of King Louis IX of France, also known as Saint Louis. He was therefore a member of the House of Capet. He was successful in conquering the Kingdom of Sicily, but eventually lost the actual island of Sicily to Manfred's daughter, Constance II, and her husband, Peter III, who was King of Aragon. This event marks an important turning point in the history of southern Italy. First, from here on out, the Spanish are going to be major players on the scene. Second, from here on out, there are going to be two Sicilies. What had been the mainland portion of the original Kingdom of Sicily stayed in the hands of Charles and his descendants. So from this point forward, that quote-unquote Sicily is generally referred to as being the Kingdom of Naples, whereas only the island of Sicily is now referred to as the Kingdom of Sicily. Let's look at the island kingdom first. When Peter III of Aragon died, his firstborn son with Constance, Alfonso III, was given the crown of Aragon, whereas his secondborn son, James, was given Sicily. However, when Alfonso died unexpectedly in his 20s, James was given Aragon, and Sicily was passed to a third brother, Frederick III. From there, Sicily remained in Frederick III's line until it ran out of male heirs. At that point, it basically merged with the crown of Aragon and ceased to have a separate king. Around the same time, the crown of Aragon also passed to the House of Trastamara because of this marriage between Eleanor of Aragon and John I of Castile. Their firstborn inherited the crown of Castile, whereas their secondborn inherited the crown of Aragon, which now included Sicily. Naples actually ended up merging with the crown of Aragon as well, but for different reasons. There, Charles I was followed by his son, Charles II, who married a Hungarian princess. Because of that marriage, their firstborn son ended up with a claim to the throne of Hungary. That line did in fact obtain the throne of Hungary and included the famous Hungarian king Louis the Great. The throne of Naples, therefore, went to Charles II's second-born son, Robert, and then to Robert's granddaughter, Joanna I. Joanna had a long reign and married 4 times, but she did not bear any legitimate heirs and ended up being assassinated. From there, the throne of Naples bounced around between several rival claimants before eventually being conquered by Alfonso V of Aragon. Thus, by 1442, Aragon controlled both of the Sicilies and would continue to do so continuously for the next 271 years. Of course, Aragon eventually merged with Castile to form Spain, which then went on to reach its peak of power under the House of Habsburg. So just keep in mind that while Charles I, Philip II, Philip III, Philip IV, and Charles II were Spanish kings, they were also the kings of southern Italy. Now, northern Italy is a different story. By this point, it had become divided into a bunch of smaller states, including several republics such as Venice, Florence, and Genoa. Of these 3, Florence, under the reign of the Medicis, did go on to become a monarchy as the Grand Duchy of Tuscany. However, they are not included on this chart because this chart mostly focuses on kingdoms only because there just isn't enough space to include everything. But if you're interested in learning more about the rulers of Florence during the Renaissance, we do have a video on them that I'll link to in the description. But back to southern Italy. During the War of the Spanish Succession, the throne of Spain ended up going to a branch of the French Bourbon dynasty. But in the process, Spain ended up losing both Naples and Sicily, at least for a while. And it's at this point that I need to introduce the Savoys. The House of Savoy initially ruled a duchy that had been part of the Kingdom of Burgundy, and hence part of the Holy Roman Empire. Because they helped the Habsburgs during the War of the Spanish Succession, they were given the Kingdom of Sicily in 1713 as a reward. During that war, the Habsburgs also captured both Naples and Sardinia from Spain, but they kept those for themselves. Then, in 1720, something very rare happened. Two kings swapped kingdoms. Victor Amadeus II from the House of Savoy, who had been King of Sicily, was made King of Sardinia instead. And Emperor Charles VI took back Sicily for himself. But then, in 1735, Spain won back both Sicily and Naples from the Holy Roman Emperor. The Spanish king, Charles V of Bourbon, then gave Sicily and Naples to his second surviving son, Charles, with the plan that his eldest surviving son, Ferdinand, would eventually inherit Spain, which he did. But Ferdinand VI of Spain ended up suffering from mental illness and died without heirs, and therefore his younger brother Charles had to succeed him, becoming Charles III. At this point, Charles III did what his father had done. He gave Sicily and Naples to his second-born son, Ferdinand, leaving his eldest son to inherit Spain as Charles IV. Now, altogether, Ferdinand I was a king in southern Italy for a whopping 65 plus years, making him the longest reigning Italian monarch of all time. But there were many changes to what he was actually king of during those 65 years. For one thing, in 1799, he lost control of Naples for 5 months during the period of the Parthenopean Republic, which was inspired by the newly established French Republic. Then, during the reign of Napoleon, he lost Naples again, during which time Napoleon's brother Joseph became King of Naples, followed by Napoleon's brother-in-law Joachim. But then, after Napoleon was defeated, Ferdinand received Naples back once again. And it was at this point that the two kingdoms of Sicily and Naples decided to once again join together officially, after which they were known as the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. And Ferdinand's descendants went on to rule the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies for 3 more generations. Now, during this entire time, the House of Savoy continued to rule Sardinia, which not only included the island of Sardinia, but some of the mainland of northern Italy as well. When the process of Italian unification occurred during the mid-19th century, it was the kings of Sardinia that ended up becoming the kings of all Italy. The Kingdom of the Two Sicilies was conquered by Garibaldi in 1861, and that same year, the brand new Kingdom of Italy was declared. So, Victor Emmanuel II started his reign as the King of Sardinia, but ended it as the first king of the modern Kingdom of Italy. 2 of his sons ended up becoming a king. His firstborn, Umberto, inherited Italy, and his secondborn, Amadeo, was, for 3 years, the King of Spain. This is because the reigning Queen of Spain, Isabel II, was deposed around this time during what's called the Glorious Revolution, not to be confused with the earlier Glorious Revolution that occurred in England. In the aftermath, the Spanish wanted a more liberal monarch, so they chose Amadeo. But things remained unstable in Spain, and after a failed assassination attempt on Amadeo, he abdicated, declaring that the Spanish people were ungovernable. Back in Italy, Umberto I was eventually succeeded by his son Victor Emmanuel III. He reigned as King of Italy during both the First and Second World War. He was therefore also king during Italy's fascist period, when the dictator Benito Mussolini held all the real power. Mussolini sought to expand Italy's power during this period, and he led successful invasions in both Africa and the Balkans. Therefore, for several years, Victor Emmanuel III also held the title of Emperor of Ethiopia, as well as King of Albania. That, of course, all came to an end when Italy lost World War II. Following the war, Italy held a referendum on whether or not to become a republic. In the hopes of maintaining the monarchy, Victor Emmanuel III abdicated just prior to the referendum, allowing his son Umberto II to become king instead. But the people still voted to become a republic, and thus the Italian monarchy came to an end in 1946. Umberto II's son, Vittorio Emanuele, is actually still living and is one of the potential claimants to the now defunct throne. But the few Italian monarchists that are left actually support another individual instead, the great-great-grandson of King Amadeo of Spain, Aimon, who holds the courtesy title Duke of Aosta. For a more in-depth look at who would be king of Italy today if Italy, or the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, were to restore its monarchy, you can check out the video we did on the topic, which I'll link to in the description. Okay, so that was a look at some of the Italian monarchs, from Charlemagne to Umberto II. Once again, if you want a copy of our brand new European Royal Family Tree West chart, you can head over to usefulcharts.com right now. Thanks for watching.